All right, welcome back to the third video on the Age of Limits. We were discussing the events that lead up to the Iranian hostage crisis. To get that, we're getting into the Iranian Revolution. The United States had backed essentially a dictator named Pahlavi. The United States had a close relationship with him, and we basically installed him or supported him as government in Iran, much to the chagrin of many of the Iranian people. So Iran is going to be a big part of Carter's final undoing. And in 1977, when Carter traveled to Iran to help celebrate Shah Pahlavi's rule, by that point, the Shah of Iran was getting increasingly unpopular amongst his own people. But the U.S. was still very, very friendly with the Shah, and the U.S. brought Iranian oil, and the Iranians bought American military equipment, and they had this good, cozy relationship. Well, in 1979, a group of religious fundamentalists overthrew the Shah, and he left the country. And the Ayatollah Khomeini came into power. Khomeini was fiercely anti-Western, and more specifically, he was very anti-American. And the Iranian Revolution and Khomeini's rise marked a big ideological shift in the Middle East political movements. Most of the time, the U.S. government was scared of socialist opposition and movements in the Middle East, but the Iranian Revolution was about Arab nationalism and about religious fundamentalism, the rise of Islamic religious fundamentalism here in the Middle East. The United States was at the beginning of a trend that was going to have long-term consequences for the United States. More immediately, it led to the Iranian hostage crisis from November of 1979 to January of 1980. The Shah of Iran, Pahlavi, had cancer, and he died the year after the revolution, but when he was still alive in October of 1979. And so he went to New York to receive treatment. Khomeini and his followers took the U.S.'s willingness to admit him as a sign of hostility because they wanted the Shah back in Iran. And so on November 4th, 1979, they seized the American embassy in Tehran and took 53 American diplomats and military personnel hostage. The Iranians announced that they would be willing to trade their hostages if the U.S. handed over the Shah, so they could make him answer for the things that he had done while he was the ruler. Carter was uncharacteristically aggressive. He refused to negotiate and announced economic sanctions against Iran. He sent a military rescue mission that ended up in a disaster, with the hostages still in place and several of the rescuers dead in a helicopter crash. And those hostages that remained in captivity for over a year. And that included the year leading up to Carter's re-election campaign. Carter's inability to get those hostages out was one of the biggest embarrassments of his presidency, and he looked inept and helpless in the face of Iranian hostility. And it kept going all through the crisis. And all the hostages were kept for about a year and a half. The hostage crisis kind of rested as an albatross right around President Carter's neck. And just to pile on the crisis, 1979 also experienced gas shortages, long lines. Here's a picture of Americans lining up to go to the gas pump. People developed a fear that they would run out of gas, and all of these things continue to pile up. And President Carter gives a pretty remarkable speech on television. It was once called the Crisis of Confidence speech. It's now referred to by historians as the malaise speech. Malaise is a medical term that really kind of means that we're not really sure what the problem is here, right? We can't quite diagnose the problem. We're not going to look at it right now. I encourage you to Google it, the malaise speech. It's in many different forms on YouTube and free to look at. But it does a couple of pretty remarkable things if you get a chance to watch it. He talks about the energy crisis. He talks about inflation. So kind of it does a little recap of all the stuff that we've been talking about in this class. But then, in a pretty remarkable sense of humility, invites or recalls a time when he invites everyday Americans to write him in and say, this is what I think you should do. He reads some of those letters on air. Some of those letters are scathing letters to the president. Reads them on air. Also acknowledges that he invited pastors and doctors and professors out to Camp David and to just talk about, what do you guys think we should do? How do we fix this mess? Talked about the results of some of those conversations. So it's a remarkable speech in a lot of ways. It's definitely worth looking at. But ultimately, his thesis of the speech is, it's your fault, America. We have a crisis in confidence. We've lost our ability to look at America as a good thing. Most Americans see that we're going to be worse off the next 5 years than we had been the previous 5 years. We've lost our confidence in our government. We've lost our confidence in our institutions, on our news media, and churches. Church attendance has gone down. So he kind of shifts the blame back to the American people. This is all your fault. And if you would just stop complaining all the time, we would get back to work. So initially, it's a well-received speech because it's remarkable humility and remarkable transparency from the president. But looking back on it, it doesn't offer a whole lot of plan, right? There's not a whole lot of how you get out of this, which is why later we started calling it the malaise speech, because ultimately he says, I don't know what's going on. So Carter is going to lose 1980 election to Ronald Reagan. And this is going to be a lot of where we end this class. But Reagan is going to be able to offer that optimism that I think Carter was trying to get to in the speech, but he just doesn't. But Reagan is charismatic, and he's energetic, and he has this beautiful vision of America in his mind, that America is great and fantastic, and if you could just see America the way I see America, you would love America too, and that is contagious. And so he is going to be a very, very important figure going forward. I hate that our videos kind of end with him, because he is going to redefine in many ways what it means to be conservative, just in the same way that FDR redefined what it means to be liberal. And he's going to have a lot of success. In many ways, Reagan is going to he's going to see an end to the economic crisis. Not only by his own doing, but other things help out, other things change, and he's going to benefit from that. He's also going to see the end of the Cold War in his reign. So the Cold War has kind of been a long narrative in this class, so he's going to see the end of the Cold War. And so a lot of these troubles that have been plaguing the United States for the 1960s and the 1970s are going to be resolved in a lot of ways in the Reagan administration. So that's it for 1302. Thank you for being with us and through this very strange and unusual time. I hope you guys are all safe and healthy, and we'll see you next semester.